Hello, this is Chapter 10, Family Risks and Resiliencies. In this chapter, we are going to talk a lot about the family system and how it is affected by addiction and how the family can affect the addicted person as well. We're going to talk a little bit about how families manage stress or how they have managed coping or stressful situations, stuff like that, and kind of, the role and impact that they have on people with addiction. We'll also talk a little bit about healing as a family and some family strategies that may be able to work to help with people who struggle with addiction. All right, so as we've kind of come to this point in Chapter 10, we have mentioned family several times, and we have mentioned that family has a very powerful role in addiction, and it's very influential on the addict. Our family teaches us how to love, how to see ourselves, how we don't love others, and how we cope with things. We learn this from family. Our family instills some of our, early on values. The family itself is a system, which makes it more than the sum of its parts, and any change in one part of the family can affect all of the family. So addiction is a disease of the entire family. It's not just a disease of one person. Some impacts that it has on the family is it can cause alienation of family members from each other. There are higher rates of divorce. There could be a loss of custody if there's children involved. Family functioning doesn't always work properly. Children don't get what they need when they grow up. There might be a lot of anger, depression, involvement in the criminal justice system, and impact kind of extends across generations of your family. Al-Anon, Alateen, are meetings, self-help group meetings that are out there, and they are designed for the family of addicts and families of addiction. So I'm going to reference something that is kind of familiar in Al-Anon, which is the 3 C's. And this is something that they try to teach the family to kind of remind them that 1, you didn't cause it, 2, you can't control it, and 3, you can't cure it. So those are the 3 C's of Al-Anon. And those are kind of important things that a family should kind of focus on or live by. Why do people have to be told that? Because it's almost impossible for them to get it. They don't get it because they're not the ones going through the addiction. They are, just there and they're affected by it and they're trying to help their loved one. So what happens when we treat the addict but not the family? Let's say the addict is clean and returns home after residential treatment. Family members may be angry and they may be resentful. Unfortunately, when people are in addiction, they sometimes do things that they wouldn't normally do if they weren't struggling with addiction. So they may have stole money. They may have, burned bridges, stuff like that. They may be emotionally depleted. The families may be emotionally depleted. They may be financially depleted. And if the addict was the symptom bearer for the family, things will tend to revert right back to where they were, or someone else will need to take up that role. We'll talk a little bit about family roles in a few minutes. So the authors believe that addiction is a family illness, and not because the family is sick, but because it affects everybody in the family, as we've kind of established here. The family is so powerful, and it can be a powerful healing force. So if the family is well educated on how to work with a person in addiction, they can be a better asset or better help to that person, and instead of enabling that person to continue on with their addiction. A question that you might be thinking or asking yourself is, do most treatment programs include family therapy? Unfortunately, no, not most programs. It's not a mandatory part of the treatment process. It would be ideal if it was part of the process, but unfortunately, you often run into situations where people don't have that family support, so it's not a required part of the treatment process. I know that whenever I did work in outpatient treatment, if they brought up family to me, I would always try to encourage family sessions or encourage at least, okay, so how could you communicate to your family? Or sometimes concerned family members would call in and ask about their family member. So the family systems therapy, let's talk a little bit about that because there are facilities that do offer family therapy. So let's talk a little bit about that. So concept of the identified patient. So if we remove the identified patient, someone else will take that role. So it is the family that is sick and not just that person. So even though that person may be struggling with addiction, if you remove that person, someone else in the family is going to be the identified patient. Maybe not an addict, but maybe they'll be struggling with something else. We look whether the family dynamics are contributing to the addiction or maintaining it. This can seem like blaming the family, as the text says. And on the other hand, we know that there are many factors that result in a person's becoming addicted, including brain chemistry. So it's not just the family. When a family member is addicted, there's often a tremendous amount of stress that gets placed on the family. So we may not find that the family is contributing to the addiction or maintaining it. So could the addict serve a function in the family? Well, giving the parents something to focus on to avoid looking at how disconnected they might be as a couple. A skilled practitioner will kind of keep an eye on this to see, what role that addict might be serving in the family aside from just dealing with their addiction. The family members will also take on specific roles in this as well, and we're going to, again, talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Instead of, or in addition to classic family therapy, we teach psychoeducation. So we're teaching the family about addiction, about the biological and cultural nature of addiction. We provide support for the family. We help the family contribute to recovery if it is possible for them to contribute. And we help them not to blame and shame themselves if that is something that they are doing. Some more focus on the family. So, is addiction a family disease? Close to 40% of adults have at least one relative with alcoholism. Many are married to someone with alcoholism or are children of alcoholics. Alateen is specifically designed for children of alcoholics. What percent of children of alcoholics develop this addiction? They say that it could be anywhere between 13 and 25%. Claudia Black was someone that your textbook references, and she was influenced by Satir. Her motto was, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. So as we just said, we should not overlook the stress that addiction places on the family. It requires a broadening of assumptions, common in family therapy and addiction fields. Authors say family treatment is often not necessary due to self-help groups. However, I feel like if you aren't, sometimes a trained professional can kind of add a little bit more help and teach a little bit more skills than maybe just a family self-help group would. But again, we have Al-Anon, which started in 1951 to serve families of AA members and is now in more than 70 countries. The story of Jacqueline Randolph, who attended and discovered in just 30 minutes that she was not helping her guy and was just being mean and being a nag to the guy. In Al-Anon, the goal is to hopefully learn that they are powerless to change the person who uses, that they may need to emotionally detach from that person, and that they shouldn't try to shield them from the impact of their addiction. Alateen is for children of parents who drink. Nar-Anon is for the family members of narcotic users. And Alcoa is if you grew up in a home with alcoholism going on, maybe you just want to talk about it or, get more information on it. There have been some modern developments as far as family and addiction goes. We shift from family as an enemy to family as a treatment ally. So in the extended systems perspective, we have individuals are within families, and we have extended families. Peers of the addict may be using and in recovery as well. We have work systems, treatment providers, friends, social services, criminal justice, and other legal services. All of these systems interact as a whole or parts of a whole. It's important to kind of be aware of that and see maybe one part isn't working as well in the treatment of the addiction itself. So adaptation is the active process of self-change, environmental change, or both. It's not just a passive adjustment to the circumstances. So we don't want to just adjust to the fact that little Johnny is now a drug addict and we're just going to have to adjust to it. But if we adapt and try to help make changes, not changing Johnny, but changing how we respond or react to Johnny, we might be more successful in helping his recovery. We all adapt to stress in creative ways, sometimes not so creative ways. Sometimes we adapt to stress by coping mechanisms such as using drugs or alcohol. So how do families adapt to addiction? Isolation, secrecy, keeping the kids quiet and keeping them out of sight when they're using, hiding the bottle or pills, getting the bottle or pills for the person, hiding money or providing money, blaming, joining in the addiction, oppose criticism or inviting sympathy, covering up for the addict, regroup without the addicted member. So, push the addicted person out of the family completely and try to regroup itself. Or more rarely, treatment maybe of the family. Maybe, everybody needs treated. So as the addicted person learns to adapt to his or her lifestyle to accommodate addiction, the family adapts to the stress that has been put on it. And I mentioned a few moments ago that we were going to talk a little bit about what members of the family could be playing what roles when it comes to this. So we're going to talk a little bit about Wegscheider's role theory. So Sharon Wegscheider was also inspired by Satir and, this concept of role theory. So there's a few roles we're going to talk about. We have an addict. The addict is the chemically dependent person. They are preoccupied with their addiction. They tend to escape relationships, whether it be work or school. And, if it's the father, they might be revered. If it's the mother, they're criticizing for neglecting the kids. We have a family manager. That is another role. If a spouse or parent compensates for the partner's addiction, they might be the family manager. This person might be organized, they nag, they worry, and they work harder than everybody else in the family. They tend to cover things up. They feel shame and guilt for not doing more or curing the addiction because they think they can cure the addiction. We have a hero. The hero is often the firstborn child. They're high achieving, they're the star, contrasted with the addict, they're a perfectionist, takes on a parental role, so they may not have a childhood. They're valued for what they do rather than who they are, and they're at risk of marrying an addict, repeating a caretaking role. They may be a leader in adulthood as well. We have the scapegoat. The scapegoat is often the second-born child, gets blamed for everything that's going wrong, makes friends easily, is at risk for pregnancy or delinquency, poor school performance, and experimentation with substances. May go into business because they relate well and they take risks. And we have the lost child. No trouble, entertains themselves, possibly uses fantasy to escape family fights. When an adult may not face problems squarely, but has a good imagination, can be creative, right, or is, good with arts. And then lastly, we have the mascot. The mascot is the family clown. This person distracts the family from the problem. They might be hyperactive and they might have a short attention span. In adulthood, they're probably very popular and likable as well. These family roles that we have just described are normal responses to stress. And this is how, each of those family roles would react to stressful situations. In your discussion board assignment, I have, typically we would do a role play if we were doing a face-to-face class, but unfortunately we can't do that being virtual. So I did the best that I could to try to find a video that would depict this that involved substance abuse, and you could kind of see some of the roles of the family. So the discussion board question will kind of give you a little bit more insight and help you to prepare for this kind of activity. But I hope that you enjoy kind of trying to figure out, okay, so which family member is which role for this. So I wanted to put that out there. So definitely make sure you check out that question, or discussion board rather. Something else I would like to mention is codependence. Codependence describes partner roles. Typically, a female may be codependent. They are self-sacrificial and enabling. Not verified by research evidence. However, it's not strange space either because that person is becoming dependent on someone else in the family. And it is used by substance abuse counselors in popular literature. I also often refer to a person being codependent on their substance as well. So, all right. So this was a little insight about that family role play. So go ahead, take a look at that video, see what you guys think about these family roles. And in the next part of this lecture video, we will pick up and kind of talk about some more things as far as family and addiction is concerned. So stay tuned. Thank you.